Welcome to all my community unity peeps. It is Thursday, February the 22nd, so I hope you are doing great this evening. And we are getting ready to get into part two of our deep dive on the Killer Mike interview on Willie D Live. So, if you are new around here, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos or when we get ready to go live. So, we're going to pick it up where we left off last night with Mr. Render. So, let's get ready to get started. Here we go. So when we last left, if you saw part one of the live stream, he was talking about how he changed schools for his kid. That his kid had pretty much been going to school with her cousins, and so he wanted her to have a different experience. So they decided to go to a different school, and she met some different kids. And so let's hear a little bit from Killer Mike about his kids' new high school experience.
Have to return the things that we did. My great grandmother's mother, my great grandmother actually taught her mother something great. Because the last 5 years, a lot of them have been telling you that the last 70 years.
Right.
Miss Farker have been telling you that last 50 years. But you didn't believe it until a pop strong white boy got on there and told you, which is still good for you. But just saying, man, believe your people. Give it a try. Look at them. You know, when you see the FO out there in a suit, they ain't sweating. You like, man, whatever they doing, I need to do. You know what I'm saying? It's working for them. Maybe I should try it too. So the first and best resource you have is that mind and that will to learn. You know, I heard, man, I remember disagreeing vehemently, man, with Dr. Bill Cosby when he went, you know, everything from coding to algebra. And I realized that part of our culture's failure was that we stopped valuing the resource of, you know. So we put her at another school. And what she learned and what I've learned is the Asian kids who typically score higher, they study in groups. Gotta think about that. And individually, she a dog about her studies. She that Spanish grade was
Okay, so what he's saying right here about the Asian kids studying in groups, that's very important. I'm sorry, the mic was off a second ago. But we're going to get to why it is like that, particularly in the Asian community. That is not an accident that it is like that. And it's also not an accident why that particular habit is not as prevalent in the community. But I'm going to let him finish his story. Here we go.
low. She got it up to 87 by herself. But she has a circle of friends where they all are smart. And when they study together, it's even more powerful.
I agree.
And we have to start to emulate that. Elijah Muhammad says, study other people that are successful. Study groups of people that are successful. We have to do that. And we have to return the things that we did. My great grandmother's mother.
Stop right here before he gets to the next story about his great grandmother's grandmother. So he talks about how the Asian community studied together. Well, there's a reason for that. And as with most things in America, those things aren't accidents. So we're going to go on over and feel free to go to any reputable source. But just for the sake of tonight's argument, here we go. How the 1800s racism birthed Chinatown, Japantown, and other ethnic enclaves. It is not a secret or an accident how the current generation of children, who are at this point third or fourth generation, all live in communities that are incredibly close knit. The economic community, the money in those communities circulate very succinctly or without a lot of leakage. And again, we said we're going to get to that in another series. So let's go through this particular article, and we're gonna go through this fast. All right, here we go. Today, visitors can shop for all these things. The Chinatowns we know today are really a consequence of exclusion laws, which created the conditions between racism and the law itself for segregated, isolated communities. These people aren't isolated because they enjoy each other's company or they found some virtue and value. They didn't have anywhere else to go, as with most of those communities. But unlike in Black communities, and we're going to get to those in a minute, there was a reason why that was not a habit that Black communities could really successfully engage in during this particular time period. So look at what it says. First, Chinese people arrived to young lady countries. By 1850, there are fewer than 1,000 Chinese in California. In 1850, there are roughly 4 million Black people across the South. We're not the same. Our experiences here are not the same, and we're going to keep going. So they developed the businesses to meet the needs of this new population. 1870s, we get the big boom. Here we go. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 barred Chinese laborers from entering the U.S., but because merchants were exempted, Chinatowns became full of shops and restaurants. One of the reasons for the proliferation of Chinese restaurants in the U.S. today is that they once offered a way for Chinese to legally enter the country to do business. And last but not least, the Chinese Exclusion Act had another impact on Chinatowns. The law helped transform the neighborhoods into destinations, tourist destinations. The problem of Chinese immigrants, which was the Exclusion Act was supposed to solve, which was seen as a threat to this country racially, economically, culturally. That was contained. People felt safe and more comfortably going to a Chinatown as an exotic place. Ooh, look, we're gonna go down there and gonna have some really cool exotic food, and we're gonna get the little trinkets, and we're gonna go see the people. It's so great. And I don't even have to get on a plane or a steamer ship. This time it'd have been a steamer ship. Later it would be a plane. Doesn't matter. Meanwhile, the Japanese enclaves also emerged in the American West during this time due to similar forces of racism in exclusion. According to Strangers from Different Shore in 1890, there were only about 2,000 Japanese on the U.S. mainland by 1910. There were millions of African Americans by 1910. So, would you like to know what's going on in America for African Americans during the 1910s? I am so glad you asked. Here we go. So, what was happening for African Americans during this time? Because clearly they were here too, huh? Something. It says when it ended in 1865. So remember, we just read the stat that in 1850 they inhabited 1,000 people. Here we go. The South, we had a brief period of Reconstruction, what I like to call the golden hour of American history, where they finally attempted to get their life together. It says life after bondage didn't differ much from life during bondage, as the African American became subject to the black codes. So, wow, in the very tiny populations of small Western states, very tiny groups of Asian immigrants from China and Japan were able to form enclaves due to racism. That same racism across the South was doing this. Losing the Civil War meant the South had little choice but to recognize the Reconstruction era policies, and that would be until the Tilden Hayes Compromise. We're going to get there in a minute. The first enacted in 1865, such as South Carolina and Mississippi, the black codes varied slightly from state to place, but were generally similar. They prohibited loitering and vagrancy. The idea was is that if you were going to be free, you should be working. Here we go. If you had 3 or 4 black people standing around talking, they were actually vagrant and could be convicted of a crime. Let's continue with Killer Mike because I don't have time to go through the rest of this. Like, do not pretend that the ancestors who sacrificed so much on our behalf, who endured so much. And I listen to so many people like this do what he is doing. And it is not fair to all the bodies in the cemeteries that have the dates 18 and 19 on them. What you are doing is not an honest telling of it. And seeing as how my ancestor, who's 94, is still alive, I have a sincere problem with that. But we shall continue.
My great grandmother actually taught her mother and her children to read.
We're gonna
So
keep.
everybody as a group, they're learning together. And
I'm
there's an encouragement factor because once children become confident and they become competent, ain't no competition. You know, it ain't nothing stopping them because the only thing you compete with then is in the mirror. So
And so we need to make education and knowledge of self a group
effort. If black folks should stop complaining about what the public school system would do, should do, or could do, and focus on the things that the public education school can do right. You can teach me 2 + 2 is 4. You can teach me proper grammar and punctuation skills, right? You can teach me the very basics of that. Take that, and then on Saturdays we should be having our own school.
Saturday school.
You know, just like
not against this concept, but this is not a new concept. And again, I don't have time to go into all the ways that these things that he is talking about are very traditional. That story he told about his grandmother, his great grandmother, depending on what period of time it was, what she was doing with her children was probably illegal. Because in addition to teaching them how to read, probably using the Bible, might I add, for a lot of people who also have issues with the black church and their current role in our society, but refuse to acknowledge their contributions to our culture. She probably used the Bible to teach them to read, and she probably also had to tell them that when they are out anywhere outside of that house, they should speak, behave, act in a way that does not belie their education. We are the only group that at every turn, federal, state, and local law, from inception to time immemorial, keeps morphing into new ways to create harm that is never repaired. So, yes, I do believe that kids need more confidence, but I don't believe that these are new things. I don't believe these are ancient things. I think these things are still going on because I know they are. But where are they happening? And more importantly, if you consider this a work, and I personally consider it a ministry, ministry always requires two things: workers and resources. Somebody has to make the sacrifice to make those things happen. Somebody has to organize those things into happening. Those things don't happen organically. The people who lead need to be prepared to lead. How many times do we see our leaders out here looking bat as guano crazy, and they look like us, and there's a collective shame that goes through the community because you made it, and now look at what you're doing. Those things are important. And he is right. We do need to have some private conversations. But I'm going to keep going because I don't want to hold you all night.
other cultures have. You know, my Jewish friends went to regular school, and then on Saturday they had to go. Like for others, I'm saying, "What you going?" Well, we go. We learn about a Torah. We learn Hebrew. At the back, I remember I went to the synagogue with my accountant. At the back of the synagogue was all these cards with the businesses. So if they're gonna look to do business, they look to do business with one another first. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. When I went to a Presbyterian church, you know, all denominations in that church, but the Presbyterians focused on having their own school in terms of how do we teach Christianity from a Presbyterian standpoint, mm-hmm. who are the Presbyterian carpenters, who are the Presbyterian plumbers. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, okay, so black people, really, that's all we need mm-hmm. to do. We need to focus on what is our Saturday school and our after school. Mm-hmm. What 2 hours are we going to give on a Saturday? Like all of us, Swahili is the most common spoken language, I think, in Africa. The brothers in jail already put it together.
This is interesting because one of the things that as we go forward on this channel, and if you are new here, thank you for joining me. If you are part of the replay gang, please leave a comment that we're going to explore that when you are a people in air quotes. Peoples require several things to basically be recognized. One of them is language. The other one is land. Then there are customs and traditions. But language and land are big ones. So one of the things we're going to explore is what is Black language? And more importantly, where is Black America? But I'm going to let Mike keep going.
They already started speaking Swahili so they could get around the guards talking. So those brothers are resources. As those brothers get out, why are those brothers not the ones teaching the young brothers Swahili? You know, we should already know how to say hello. We should already know words to be able to speak in a room full of people. Because other people do it. Other groups of people can speak in a room full of people. Now, you go get your nails done. And you don't know what the hell they say. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you know at the end of it, 125.
Right.
They want $125. They say that better. They said anything. They say the whole time. So I think that we have to do that. We have to understand everything does not have to be public. Everything does not have to be validated by other people. Some things are best kept private.
When he's right, we will 100% give him credit in this space. I do think in our social media spaces are full of people who I honestly think because they don't have real community spaces, IRL, down the street, round the corner, the YMCA, the community center, the after school meetings, whatever it is, the infrastructure that is purely for the community to be able to address these things, everybody got to take it to social media. If my husband leaves me, I got to take it to social media. If my kids are acting up, I got to take it to social media. My kids got a good grade, I got to take it to social media. My kids got a bad grade, I got to take it to social media. I want to show out. But that is because we really don't have good spaces. And it also comes from another thing that we have spent far too long valuing. And this is one of my indictments against people like Mike who always try to spew this community garbage. You come to this always so late because money, cars, clothes, what was the only thing on the menu for a lot of wealthy people in our community. And when they come to the realization, a lot of times it's either later in life, which we always appreciate, or it's after everything's been taken. The fame, the money, freedom sometimes. Then, and only then, at their lowest can they look up. That's also a problem with not having people that can tell you the truth. So many of these people are surrounded by people who just simply will not be honest with them. That's ugly. Please do not put on those socks and go out in public. I do not care how much they cost. But I'm going to let Mike continue.
Every conversation is not meant for everybody.
Agreed.
You know, my grandfather used to tell me, man, stay out of white folks' business. And I never knew what that meant. But what it meant was mind your own business, tend to your own house, tend to your own crops. And that way, your community will be what you want it to be versus you looking at other communities saying, why? You know?
We'd be less concerned about whether or not they're going to teach that Black people benefited from slavery.
Yeah.
Because we know on Saturdays, we teaching the truth to our youngsters.
Absolutely. And I got some opinions on that I won't even talk about. I just said that's some stuff best.
Thank you, Lord, because this live might have lasted 8 hours. Oh my goodness. I am so glad that we decided to table that discussion. So I'm gonna keep it all the way PG about that part of the conversation. So let's just run it back right quick.
We'd be less concerned about whether or not they're going to teach that Black people benefited from slavery.
Yeah.
Because we know on Saturdays, we teaching the truth to our youngsters.
Absolutely. And I got some opinions on that I won't even talk about. I just said that's some stuff best I say it.
Okay.
The fights we are having about curriculum are not just about African American students. It is also about all the other children in those classrooms who need to understand the fullness of the American story, whether that is Native, whether that is African American, whether that is even the colonial experience. We should be able to tell the whole story. So no, we're not just fighting for our right for our kids to know our history. That has always happened around the kitchen table. I'm starting to think that some of the people that come to the front of the stage and grab a microphone and sit their behinds down there either don't have good family dynamics or they don't have family good relationships or they're trying to sell us a story about the community that I promise you there would probably be 1,000 people in the comment section that could say, "Nah, my grandmother used to talk about this all the time." He even just said, "My grandfather used to tell me don't worry about white folks' business." The black community has always been a kitchen table, kitchen teaching kind of community. So again, it's the short term memory loss about how hard the ancestors worked. It's the willful blindness to the current conditions. And moreover, it's a lack of commitment because commitment ain't just about what you say. Faith without works for all the, them people who might be on the replay game. It's not a real honest assessment about why that fight exists. That fight exists. So when people go to places of power and they have the ability to make decisions about hiring, or they have decisions about where a freeway is going to go through your neighborhood and destroy your economic base, or they have the ability to sit at a bank and decide if your business will get approved or how many points are going to be on your interest. Because if they don't see you and they don't fully understand the entirety of the story of why historically there are serious deficits, serious discrepancies between the wealth achievement and the current earnings between communities, that knowledge isn't just for our kids. That knowledge belongs to everybody. So let's keep going.
So you know
If
what I
you
mean?
say so.
Yeah. So I mean, it is
Mhm.
because until you really learn what it was for real, you not gonna hear the news. Like one of the best things that happened to me and members of my crew was when the doctor say, "Hey man, you pre-diabetic, you better get it together now."
Mhm.
Well, that gives you another discipline. You say,
Mhm.
"Okay, baby, I got to go read How to Eat to Live again.
Yeah.
I got to focus on eating like this. I got to have a certain discipline."
Mhm.
So diabetes ravages us, right?
Yeah.
But hearing that news, to me and members of my crew, made us transform the
Yeah.
way we move. I done
Self-improvement.
lost a little weight. So, I'm not saying slavery was good or beneficial. I'm saying, boy, if I'm the only person know how to pick cotton and we just got free, oh, you have to pay me to pick some cotton now, baby. Yeah.
I'm going to let him make a few more comments here, but this is where we're going to stop because this is where we're going to take our deep dive about why this was probably one of the most problematic things he could have possibly ever said about what he is talking about. So we're going to run that back for like 2 seconds and let him get that full statement out.
Oh, diabetes ravages us, right?
Yeah.
But hearing that news, to me and members of my crew, made us transform the
Yeah.
way we move. I done
Self-improvement.
lost a little weight. So, I'm not saying slavery was good or beneficial. I'm saying, boy, if I'm the only person know how to pick cotton and we just got free, oh, you have to pay me to pick some cotton now, baby. Yeah, it ain't free no more. Yeah, I'm not your slave no more. Now we in a free market. Now we exist in the capitalist system.
That go back to using your resources.
Now it's not. And for people who don't know this, it's important.
All right, so I said I wasn't going to hold you long. So let's go back to the black codes because see what he just said was if we are free now, I's free now, you going to pay me like I wait, boss. You going to give me all the monies I'm entitled to, sir, Mr. Boss Man, sir. Sure about that? Black Code of the United States, any numerous laws enacted after the former Confederacy between 1865 and 1860 designed to place the social controls. For everyone who thinks that slavery is only an economic system, it is not. Slavery was far more about the social controls, about being able to control when, where, the movement, the birth, the marriage, the healthcare, the food, the daily living of an entire labor class. And by the time the 1850s came along, that was roughly like 3 to 4 million people. The black codes had their roots in the slave codes that had formerly been in effect. Yes. So there was always rules. And when you have a system that is based on rules, there is two things you need to remember. Number one, it is incredibly easy to replicate once you have the rules written down and you find out what works. Don't believe me? Ask anybody who's tried to lose weight on a diet. They may have tried dozens and dozens and dozens of different diets, but when they found the one that worked, it kicked butt and they lost a crap ton of weight. And then they were able to replicate it. So if they went off the diet, cool. But if they know they needed to come back and lose some more weight, they had the blueprint. Imagine sending out a blueprint for social control for 100 years. And the minute someone comes along and tells you you got to rip up that piece of paper, you just put a line through it and change the word from slavery to black. Move an N, get rid of a comma. Slave rebellions were not unknown. For anybody saying a president who got shot at a theater is the person that freed the slaves. And he's going to get to Haiti in a minute, and we'll probably get to that in part 3. No, the system was untenable because the people in the system were never going to let it ride. The people in that system were always against that system. Because at some point he's going to say something, and we'll get to that in our next episode as well, about, oh, I just supposed slaves, sir. Just a master slave, sir. Sir, that is a Hollywood fictitious, born of money, slime, and sleaze on a backstage studio lot. It's propaganda. That is never, ever, ever who slaves were. And the possibility of uprisings were a constant source of agony, anxiety in the colonies and states with large slaves population. In Virginia, between the years of 1780 and 1864, 1,400 slaves were convicted of crime. 91 of these convictions were for insurrection and 346 for murder. All slaves' codes had certain provisions in color in common, and in all of them, the color line was firmly drawn, and any amount of Negro blood established the race of a person, whether free or slave, as Negro. The status of the uprising followed that the mother, so that the status of the offspring followed that of the mother, so that the child of a free father and a slave mother was a slave. Now, would anybody like to raise their hand in the audience? Replay gang, if you are listening, type it in the chat. Why would it be important for the offspring of slave women to be considered enslaved when for probably roughly 20,000 years in human history, whatever the status was of the father of that child was the status of that child? Is there possibly a reason out there why that might have been a necessary change in this system of social controls with economic benefit built on a genocide? There were numerous restrictions to enforce the social controls. Slaves could not be away from their owners' plantations without permission. They could not assemble unless a white person was present. They could not own firearms. They could not be taught to read or write or transmit or possess inflammatory literature, and they were not permitted to marry. So, Immediately following the Civil War, here comes the Black Codes. The first thing they did to mirror what was already in the slave codes, where it says a slave could not be away from an owner's premises without permission, in the Black Code becomes vagrancy laws. To be a vagrant meant you were unemployed and without a permanent residence. So a person could be fined, arrested, and then bound out for a term of labor if unable to pay the fine. Also, if your dependent children were healthy and you were not, your children could be apprenticed away from you and hired out as orphans. Some states limited the type of property blacks could own, and in others, blacks were excluded from certain businesses and from skilled trades. Former slaves were once again constantly forbidden to carry firearms. While Killer Mike is the biggest 2A advocate, you got 350 years of people being scared of the bejesus and constructing all kinds of laws around their fear. And you think our ability to access a right will save us from the irresponsibility of someone who doesn't believe we ever had that right. And up until like 37 seconds ago, as it relates to American history, they are almost correct about that. It was the northern reaction to the Black Codes, as well as the bloody anti-black riots in Memphis, New Orleans, and all across. Riots were almost exclusively a settler thing, whereas we have been propagandized for the last 40 years to think, oh, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. That is a 1950 propaganda. If you want to know who did all the burning down of the things, all of the violence, all of the tearing up of the communities, it was not the newly or formerly enslaved, newly freed, formerly enslaved. That was not them. Reconstruction did away with the black codes, but after Reconstruction was over, how could Reconstruction possibly be over? We're not gonna even get into that. So if you are here, we're going to keep this one short tonight. We're going to let Michael Render take us out with a few more details. We're going to stop at about the 30-minute mark, and then I will see you for part 3.
If I'm a slave, I'm not getting paid. But every farmer, you have a master class in the South. Those are the rich people who own damn near everything. They still do to this day. Crawford Long was the guy who invented an anesthesia to put people to sleep to essentially in the Civil War, cut their limbs and stuff off, right? He owns part of my father's family. I'm got this, and this ain't no myth or no how about this is we were owned by his family. I'm of that lineage, right?
In Georgia?
Yep, in Georgia. Crawford Long. Named a hospital for him. He sits in the state capitol now. They asked me to come to the family reunion. I said, no, I'm okay. Thank you. But this man, having owned human beings, at some point, somebody on there was smart enough to start another leg of this family, had his black family. They was use their resources to buy their own land. So my great-grandfather had a farm. My great-grandfather didn't have to be dependent on anybody. His children didn't. There were things that he took from that was a horrible experience, but it enriched him in a way that allowed him to be a better man. There was things that
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. If you are new here, we are the community. Here we concern ourselves with growth and not gossip. So, as always, if you find this content to be valuable, please feel free to share it with a family member or friend. As our channel continues to grow, we would love to hear from you. So, please leave us a comment or send us an email. The email will be in the description. And as always, I will tell you every time we meet. I hope blessings chase you down. I hope trouble never finds your door. I need you to level up because the community needs you. And until next time, be kind and stay safe.